What did we learn from Premier League Game Week 1? The league is finally back, and there will be some reactionary fans that will be drawing conclusions about their club's future from the first game of the season. But I'm going to tell you something. If a player plays bad in the first game of the season, that doesn't mean they're going to have a bad season. If you win the first game of the season, doesn't mean it's going to be a good season. Man United won their first game of the season last year. And if you lose your first game of the season, it still doesn't mean it's going to be a bad season. But we're going to break down all the games that I have watched over the weekend. And we'll be going through all the positives and negatives of these games on the screen because they're all the games I saw. I did actually watch a bit of the Sunderland game. I wanted to see how Sunderland played in the highlights. They also looked very good. But we'll start with Chelsea 0-0 Palace and Aston Villa 0-0 Newcastle because I just didn't do individual videos on those games because I watched them, but it was a 0-0 and I was like, yeah, can't be bothered. Like, wasn't a good enough game, but we will talk about that because we did learn a fair bit about Chelsea. I thought Newcastle played quite well. We'll talk about Spurs 3-0 Burnley. We'll talk about Manchester United. We'll talk about Manchester City. Then we'll talk about Arsenal. And then we will talk about Liverpool 4-2 Bournemouth, talk about positives, negatives, what we learned from those games, potentially areas that the clubs may need to address in the transfer window, and just general takeaways from those games. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. I'll start with the Chelsea game and then the Newcastle game because I didn't actually do a match reaction on those games. I was going to do a match reaction on those games, and then it's a 0-0. And if a game is boring, and if the game is a 0-0, I'm just like, I'd rather just cover them in a general video rather than do a 10-minute video talking about a 0-0 because it was a boring game. But there were positives, there were negatives from Chelsea. My first thought is you can see that Chelsea have only played 2 pre-season games compared to maybe the 5 Palace had under their belt. I felt that Palace were more up for it physically. I thought Palace were first to every second ball, and I thought the physicality Palace brought, Chelsea struggled with. Chelsea were phenomenal in their 2 pre-season games, phenomenal versus PSG, but Palace were just physically on Chelsea, and that caused Chelsea a lot of issues, and they defended well Palace, and they played well. But one player that really impressed me for Chelsea, who has a big role to step into, was Josh Achimpong. Achimpong. Fantastic. For a 19-year-old centre-back to come in first game of the season, there's going to be a bit of pressure on him because Cole's injured. And I've always said, I think that Cole was a little bit underappreciated by Chelsea fans. I think he's very good on the ball. And I think if he got injured, I think Chelsea fans would realise that he's a lot better than he gets credit for. And I think you could see maybe the importance of Colwell missing in today's game. But I thought Josh Achimpong did well when he filled in. I think obviously Tosin is a little bit of a miss as well. So I think with those injuries, he's going to have a bigger season. I know that Fofana's around. I know that Badia Shile is going to come back. But I do think that this is a very good young centre-back. And arguably was Chelsea's best player. I think him, Caicedo, and Esteval, when Esteval came on, were Chelsea standout performers. I thought Enzo Fernandez had a stinker. I thought Santos, when he came on, was also a lot better. Now, I think Enzo Fernandez is a good player, but that was one of his worst performances in a Chelsea shirt. But Achimpong got 81 out of 87 passes, 9 duels won, 5 clearances, 100% fouls won. He was physically strong, technically secure. I think he made this really good double tackle, and then he ended up winning a foul for it. And I think, he could have a big season. I think he is a big talent. And not just him, but Esteval was really, really impressive. Now, I want to talk about Jamie Gittins. First of all, was Jamie Gittins good? No. What was this one game? Yes. Is he a 20-year-old kid? Yes. Is he incredibly raw? Yes. And do I think he will be a good sign for Chelsea? Yes. Now, I got a bit stick the other week, 3 weeks ago, for saying that if Garnacho joined Chelsea, he would bench Gittins. And I had a lot of Chelsea fans going, Garnacho's not better than Gittins. Garnacho's not better than Gittins. Gittins might end up being the better player. I think technically he's probably better. I think he's got a better attitude, a better work rate, and potentially a high ceiling. But right now, Garnacho is a better player than Gittins. Garnacho, playing for a worse side, had a better season than Gittins last year because Gittins got dropped from the Dortmund lineup. He only scored 1 goal in the last 6 months. Garnacho, while raw, he's less raw than Gittins. Garnacho is not the finished product. Garnacho misses big chances. Garnacho is selfish. His decision-making annoys me. But as someone that watched Gittins and Garnacho last year, not gone off social media hype of Garnacho, Man United fans don't like him because he plays in a crap team. Gittins, he plays abroad, we don't watch him week in, week out, but he had a few fancy flicks, social media hype. From watching them both play, Garnacho is more ready right now than Gittins. I think Gittins could be the better player in the future, but I'm saying this being honest, and I got stick for it 3 weeks ago from Chelsea fans, but Garnacho would bench Gittins right now. Right now. Because he's more physically used to the league. His work rate is incredibly good. He's very good at running, taking on players, making things happen out of nowhere, taking risks. His finishing annoys me, His ability to create separation annoys me. His selfishness annoys me. But I think, you can see why Chelsea would have needed maybe a Garnacho there. I think Esteval should start your next game, move Neto to the left. But that being said, I do think Gittins will be a success. But Gittins, for me, you want to play him in the more transitional games where he's going to get space, maybe against the Liverpool, where he can get in behind at a Frimpong that might push up high. Maybe you want to play him against, someone where their fullbacks go high. Maybe in Arsenal, he can get in behind. But I don't think this was the game for Gittins because it was very physical. Where someone like Esteval, who's a bit more unpredictable, a bit more comfortable on the ball, in small spaces, could instantly come on and just make something happen and be a bit more direct. There's going to be games where Gittins is going to be better than Esteval. I think when it's transitional, when it's space. But I think when you need a bit of creativity, I thought Esteval brought a lot. I thought Esteval looked good. And I think, you've got to use Gittins and Esteval depending on the opponent. And you could say the same with Delap and João Pedro. Now, João Pedro has been immense. He's a very good player. But if it's a physical game against physical centre-backs and you're being man-marked by all these centre-backs, that will suit Delap more. If you want someone to drop deep, combine play, bit more technicality, João Pedro. If you want a bit more physicality, Delap. He came on, he had a shot. The game was more suited to Delap. So from this game, you can see what the profiles would do. I think Xavi Simons is a good option to have, but having different profiles of players can suit different games. That's what I think. In general, Chelsea lacked bite. I think that Chelsea just weren't as fast-paced, as aggressive as we had seen them. I think Chelsea fans will be disappointed, but Crystal Palace just beat Liverpool. They beat City in an FA Cup final. If you're going form table for the second half of the season, Crystal Palace was 7th for the second half of the season form table, or 8th, sorry. They were literally like a couple points behind you second half of the season form table. They beat City. They beat Liverpool recently. I've seen Chelsea fans reacting online. It's always a reactionary Twitter ones. Doesn't represent Chelsea. Figure they have a bad season now because they had one draw against a good Palace side. I think Chelsea are going to have a very good season. I don't think they're at their best today, but they were playing a tough side. I think they need a centre-back. I think they need a left winger. I think it was a bad game for Enzo, but I think Chelsea will be absolutely fine this season, and I think there's a reactionariness online. Most Chelsea fans that I talked to just went, first game of the season, Palace, not an easy game, very confident. Going on to Newcastle Villa, which I thought was going to be a really good game, and it ended up being a snore fest. Now, if I'm looking at this game, Newcastle absolutely dominated this game. Like, they were fantastic in that first half, and how they did not go and 1-0 up surprises me. But you have to give it to Villa. They defended well. Up until the red card, I thought Konza was brilliant. I thought Villa defended well. I think Matty Cash had a really good game, and I think he's a player that I've been critical of Villa, but I thought he was one of Villa's best performers, particularly in that second half when Villa went down to 10 men. He just kept being there. I thought the goalkeeper, what's his name? I've got his name. I thought he was really good, actually. He was really stand out. But what I noticed about Newcastle was how hard they worked. Newcastle are the hardest working team in the Premier League for me. The way their midfield and defence never stopped working, and they kept winning back the ball, and Villa was struggling in possession. They were sloppy in possession, but Newcastle kept winning back. Joelinton, Bruno Guimaraes and Tonali, those three were excellent, winning back the ball because Tielemans, Camara and Nana, Aston Villa have some unbelievable midfield options. But the back four of Villa was good. The back four of Newcastle was good. Dan Burn had an excellent game. Livramento had a decent game. The back four of both teams were fantastic, but that Newcastle midfield was excellent. But Newcastle's big problem was they were missing Isak. Newcastle created 16 shots but no goals. Anthony Gordon had about 4 shots in the first 15 minutes. Maybe sometimes he shot when he maybe shouldn't have shot. But I just think had you had a striker there, it's different, that striker's instinct. But also I think someone to hold up the ball and help sustain pressure in that final third. I think the lack of striker was sin. And I think Isak obviously refusing to train, the way he's acting isn't professional. And that's a frustrating situation for Newcastle to be in. But they clearly needed the striker today because it was almost harder for Newcastle when they went down to 10. But when Villa went down to 10 because Villa were just sitting deep in the low block. And Newcastle didn't have that striker that could just hold on to the ball and patiently help Newcastle break down those low blocks. That's the one area Newcastle are going to struggle is low blocks. Newcastle, the transitions, how fast they were attacking Villa. Some of the football they were playing that first half was incredible. They couldn't quite finish off their opportunities. I think Alanga should have scored early on. I think Gordon ended up having a chance. And there was a really good cross, I think, from Alanga into Harvey Barnes, which was a brilliant cross from Matty Cash. But Newcastle struggled to break down that low block. But overall, I think that was a very good performance from Newcastle. A lot of people put Newcastle in their predictions for like 10th, 11th in the Premier League. I predicted them to come 5th because I think, yeah, they're losing Isak, but I also think this is Eddie Howe. This is a well-drilled side. I think Jacob Ramsey, Alanga will be good signings. But a lot of people think Newcastle can have a bad season. I think their overall performance said to me that if they get a good striker in like Vissa, I think they will have a good season, depending on fitness. Also, if you'd have said to a Newcastle fan before the game, you're going to draw away at Villa Park, they would have said solid result. I think the fact that they were the better side for most of the game and had 20 minutes versus 10 men, it might feel like a bad result for Newcastle, but it's probably not. It's probably frustration is probably the key word to drive that game from a Newcastle perspective. I think Villa will be happy in the end, annoyed about the red card, maybe not the best performance from Villa. Watkins wasn't very heavily involved. But I thought the Newcastle midfield was excellent. They won all the battles, and I think they put in a strong performance against the likes of Watkins, Morgan Rogers. So yeah, so they're the two games I didn't do a video on, so I wanted to do a longer review for those two games, but I want to keep these next reviews to a couple of minutes, so this video isn't too long. But Kudus and Richarlison impacted the game really well. They were good in the PSG game. They were good versus Burnley. As I said in my video, I thought Spurs going 1-0 up was big because I think they would have struggled maybe against a low block. I did feel at times Spurs lack that creativity, which Eze coming in will solve if they get Eze in. If they get Savinho in, that double solves it. It looks like they're set to do that. Obviously, they've got Kulusevski to come back later on in the season as well, who's a very good creative player. But I noticed in the second half, Spurs were a lot better. They were a lot more confident. They were playing quicker. And obviously, the big difference was Kudus and Richarlison today. Double assist from Kudus, double goals from Richarlison. Solanke's very good outside the box, technical player, work rate, is a good technical player. But when it comes to inside the box, that's when Richarlison does his best stuff. He can be a liability outside the box, but inside the box, when it comes to being, getting on the end of headers, being a nuisance, scoring the scrappy goals or the good goals, because that scissor kick was insane. Richarlison was there, and I think Kudus just put two good deliveries in the box, and Richarlison is there. And I think Richarlison, if he can stay fit, is a player that Thomas Frank will like because he presses, he's good in the box, he scores the scrappy goals. Solanke's more technically good, can do more in all-round play outside the box, but what Solanke needs to do is get in the box more with Kudus' crossing. Kudus brings so much that Brennan Johnson doesn't bring. Brennan Johnson can score a goal, but outside of his goal, he doesn't impact the performance lows, whereas Kudus is continually beating his man, continually dribbling past people, continually making things happen. He's so unpredictable, drop with the shoulder, puts the cross in twice, bang on the money. Like the ability to get past someone, put in a cross, you can't push him off the ball when he dribbles. He's hard to push off the ball when he dribbles. He's very good. And to have Eze potentially coming into that, Spurs will be good. Under Thomas Frank, I feel like Spurs are more compact, they're more organised, they're better from set pieces. I don't think the midfield had the best first half other than Sarr, but I thought the second half from the midfield was really good from Tottenham. There was an engine there, they were playing much better. I think there's definitely build-up issues where Romero's going to be very reliant on, and you're really building up out wide through the fullbacks. I do think long-term you'll need a progressive number 6. But Spurs were more structured, they look harder to beat. We've seen these in these first two games under Thomas Frank. Sarr looks fantastic so far under Thomas Frank. There's a creativity issue. Thomas Frank can improve Tottenham all he wants, but he's going to need individual brilliance to win games, and I think Tottenham will get that in Eze. But I think in terms of structure, set pieces, defensive setup, Tottenham look a lot better, and I think the Eze and Savinho links could improve that. The midfield is young, and I like that Thomas Frank went with a different midfield of Bergvall and Sarr, despite Benfica and Palhinha being good the recent games. Yawn. We're going to talk about Man United. We'll then talk about Man City. We'll then talk about Arsenal. So, from a Manchester United perspective, I was really impressed with Cunha. He was fantastic for me. He almost scored a brilliant goal. I was impressed with Mbeumo. And Mbeumo stood out in the first half. Cunha stood out in the second half. I was really impressed with their performances. Obviously, the attack just needs to click in the final third. When we're putting all the crosses in the box, Sesko wasn't on the pitch. Sesko comes on the pitch. We start putting crosses in the box, which is annoying. But they were good. I thought Mason Mount was very good on and off the ball. I thought De Ligt in Euro was rock solid at the back. Luke Shaw had a very good game. De Ligt bullied Gyökeres. Arsenal fans sent me this one clip of Gyökeres pushing over De Ligt. Yeah, but we watched the full game. De Ligt bullied Gyökeres. Yes, Gyökeres pushed him over once, but let's not pretend that anything else happened from Gyökeres. There was a lack of box presence from United. I thought Bruno was poor. I thought Garte was atrocious when he came on. I think there was nobody in the box when we were putting these crosses in. We didn't have bodies in the box, bodies to flood the box, and that's where the lack of goals came from. And if only Sesko was on the pitch, I think Ahmad should have started. I thought Ahmad was so much better than Dalot when he came on, and I think United could have got a penalty in a different day. I'm not going to say it's a foul on Bayindir. I think Bayindir has to do better. I think Bayindir is crap. I think if Man United and Arsenal had swapped goalkeepers, Man United would have won today. But look, Man United new goalkeeper in midfield was an issue coming into this game. It showed it was an issue, but there was positives there. I thought Man United were the better side. Going into Manchester City, Reinders. I just knew Reinders was going to be an insane signing for Manchester City. Goal and assist on his debut, looking like prime Gundogan. But what you got with Reinders is he's got the legs that Gundogan lost last season. He can defensively cover ground, improve City defensively, protect their defence. He's good in build-up, good at recycling the ball, but then he can get up and he can crash the box and he can get goals and get assists and make an impact. And for 46 million, he looks like a bargain. He slots in. He was good in the Club World Cup. He was good in the friendly versus Palermo. He just slots right in. And him and Rodri, playing together is going to be scary when Rodri's back. That was the perfect midfielder for Manchester City. I also thought Oscar Bob was really good. I think he's so technical and so nice to watch when he glides with the ball. Haaland getting his brace, doing what he does. Thank you for the FPL points. Cherky off the bench getting a goal. You can see the brilliance and individual quality he has. Players with Cherky's individual quality, people are saying, oh, well, he do it in Pep's system. He doesn't have this, doesn't have that. Cherky just has a different level of individual quality. He's going to make an impact. As I said, Oscar Bob was really good dribbling. Cherky getting the goals good for confidence. I think Doku's going to have a big season, but I thought Doku was particularly poor. I thought Nico Gonzalez, who hasn't been super impressive at City, was very good today, and I think he showed what he can bring. I still think it's too early to write him off as a player. City looked comfortable. It was easy for them. Nori looked good. The defence looked solid. Yeah, City looked very comfortable. James Trafford was solid. It was a very good 4-0 win over Wolves. And yeah, City, a lot of people writing them off because of one poorish season last year, which they recovered from. The fact that Marmoush and Cherky was on the bench and they played that well when they were opening up teams that quickly and that good. Yeah, it worries me. I thought City were excellent. Going into Arsenal. Raya, excellent. Key saves. Ben White and Timber, I thought, were good. Calafiore was very good in that game. I thought Arsenal's box defending was good. I think Arsenal's Saliba and Gabriel probably didn't have the best first half, but I thought the second half was good. Arsenal's game plan was good in the end. They didn't play good, but they got the win. And we always criticise Arsenal for not getting scrappy wins, not being able to win games when they play bad. And they did that today. So you've got to give Arsenal credit for that. It was a disciplined performance in the second half. They defended well. Man United could not break them down. They got the goal from the set piece. They didn't win pretty, but they won ugly. And we criticise Arsenal for not winning ugly. I thought the midfield was bypassed at times. I thought Odegaard worked hard and looked sharper. I don't think it was a good game from Arsenal. I think that's probably the worst they'll play this season. And I think despite playing bad today, that doesn't mean that Arsenal are going to have a bad season. People are watching this game and saying that Arsenal won't be in the title race. Look, Old Trafford's always a place where Arsenal have gone and not played well. They drew there last year. They didn't play well. It's just what Old Trafford does to Arsenal. So just because they were bad today doesn't mean Arsenal are going to be bad every game. I still think Arsenal can win the league. I think it's very reactionary to judge Arsenal off that game. And at the end of the day, Arsenal fans would have all taken 3 points in a bad performance at Old Trafford over a good performance at Old Trafford and 0 points. Let's be honest. Gyökeres is getting roasted online. Gyökeres was atrocious. Gyökeres didn't get service, and when he finally got fed the ball, he put in a bad cross and he fell over the ball and his touch was poor. And yeah, that was a rubbish debut from Gyökeres. I'm not going to lie. But am I going to be sitting here making nicknames about Gyökeres and calling him a flop? No, it's one game. He will need time to adapt. I'm confident Gyökeres will succeed at Arsenal. I'm confident Gyökeres will be a good signing for Arsenal and he will score goals. I think Arsenal need to adapt to give him more service, but I do believe that he will be a good signing for Arsenal. But yes, he was very poor. But so were other players. I don't think Declan Rice had a good game, and we all know that he's a very good player for Arsenal. I don't think Saka had a good game, and we all know that he's a world-class player. So Gyökeres is taking the heat, but I have to say, you can't judge him off one game. So, going into the Liverpool game, it was such an entertaining opening game. Like, as an opener, end to end, very good game to watch. Was really hoping Bournemouth were going to get something from it. And look, Liverpool were vulnerable at times. We saw that in the Palace game on transition. Gravenberch was a huge miss. A lot of people slandering Konate. Konate did not have a good game, and Liverpool do need defensive reinforcement. But I think people forget that that defence got no protection from the midfield. Gravenberch was a huge miss, but the quality in attack Liverpool had was insane. Like Ekitike for a debut, the technical ability, the touches, the turns, not just the goals and assists. His all-round play was fantastic. It's not a situation of Isak walks in. Ekitike was phenomenal. Gakpo, who gets a lot of stick, but that goal Gakpo got was so well taken. And the difference between Liverpool and a lot of other teams in the league is their individual quality in attack. Salah can have a bad game, but he can score a fantastic goal. He can put in a fantastic ball that could create a goal. Chiesa comes off the bench, scores a goal, is electric, being a nuisance, trying to make things happen. Ekitike, Gakpo, Salah. Isak to go into that. That's individual quality that can win you games. So even if Liverpool aren't at the very best, you give the attackers that ball in a decent area and they can make anything happen. You look at the goals that Salah and Gakpo got. Most other Premier League attackers in that exact same scenario would not have turned it into a goal. They had a lot of work to do, and that comes through individual quality. And the quality that Liverpool have in their attack is insane. It's going to win them a lot of games. And people are writing Liverpool off already because their defence isn't fully there. They didn't look amazing versus Crystal Palace. Liverpool are still favourites to win the league, in my opinion. Everyone will write them off. Nobody thought they were going to win the league last season. I feel like it's a thing that always happens. But that Liverpool team is good. And they've got a good attack. And Slot is a good manager. And there'll be an adaptation period. I do think the new signings will need time to gel. I don't think it was the best game from Wirtz. I don't think it was the best game from Kirkes. But I think Liverpool will be fine. Ekitike, 2 goals and assists. The link-up play from him was unreal. I thought Gakpo had an excellent game. He was progressing the ball well. He was very influential. Chiesa, he didn't have many chances under Slot, and I always praise him for not complaining, being professional, praising Slot, getting on with it. And like the Carabao Cup final, he comes off the bench today and proves reliable. And look, I think he might leave Liverpool, but I think he's got more to give than maybe Slot realises. And I think, he's a player that if he comes off the bench with, Salah going to AFCON as well, it's a good option to have with Diaz and Núñez obviously going. You're losing a lot of names that were in attack last season, and you're going to bring Isak and Ekitike in. But I do think Chiesa for depth could be a good option to have. I know Frimpong can play right wing, but Conor Bradley can't always stay fit. But I thought Chiesa was good. He can play all across the front three. I thought Gakpo was excellent. Ekitike was good. I don't think Salah was great, but he gets a goal, and it's such a good goal. I don't think Wirtz was great, but as I said about Gyökeres, you cannot write Wirtz off after one game. The issues was Semenyo was unbelievable. He ran through Liverpool, and we saw that Crystal Palace ran through Liverpool. And Liverpool, I think, will look at Adam Wharton next year. I think Liverpool will look at DMs next year. Hopefully not Baleba. Hopefully he goes to Manchester United. But Konate was poor, but he got no protection from the midfield. And there was big defensive issues for Liverpool, but their defence got no protection. It was a little bit like Ten Hag's second season when teams used to run past Man United's midfield. And I think Slot will fix that. And I think Liverpool have the quality to adapt to that. And I think Gravenberch was a bigger miss. But I don't think the defence got much protection, and that's something that Liverpool will have to look at. Gay looks like he's coming in. Isak looks like he's coming in. I think in 2026 you'll probably go for an Adam Wharton type player. I think that is the one question there. I think I like McAllister, I like Szoboszlai, but they play better next to someone like Gravenberch that can go deep, if you want my honest opinion. But all in all, I thought Liverpool was good. I thought Frimpong was good, and they're still my favourites to win the league. Anyway, that is a roundup of today's video. Thank you very much for watching, guys. See you next time. Bye.